Welcome to Ops or Die, the podcast for people that know ops isn't sexy until it saves your ass.
Hey, Maria, Katie, thank you for having me here. My name is Shem. I'm the managing partner and co-founder of Menlo Park Patents. I founded Menlo Park Patents as a frustrated tech entrepreneur that paid exorbitant amounts of his own money for intellectual property services, namely patents, for the previous startups that I have. And I basically took those frustrations and I built a firm that solves a major issue for startups, which is the cost of IP and quality. To date, we've been able to service clients in 47 US states. And this year, we're on par to do around 1,000 patent applications for clients at a 95% approval rate. It's really all due to our proprietary process that we've um, engineered and perfected over time, which allows us to push forward a high quality patent application draft at a fixed low rate, um, all of which can be found on our website, and really service our clients in the best way possible.
Thank you, Shem. So how did you come up with the name Menlo Park Patents? Because I know there is some link there with the light bulb from Edison, which was one of the key reasons why patents, the whole patent industry got started.
So when we first started out, our original name was Nuventus. But after we did a lot of market research, we found that it sounded like a pharmaceutical. And so we wanted to basically come up with a name that would resonate with innovation and the startup community as a whole. And Edison Patents was the first name we thought of. But then when I started to Google, I found out that Edison had a famous laboratory in Menlo Park, New Jersey.
Oh,
But
Oh,
then
wow.
dually, Menlo Park, California is the home of venture capital. So I just said Menlo Park Patents, and the name just stuck, and it resonates really well with our target market and startup founders as a whole.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't even know there was a Menlo Park in New Jersey.
Yeah, I didn't know either. I knew Menlo Park, California, but New Jersey wasn't on my radar until I looked it up.
That's awesome. Does Menlo Park, New Jersey still exist?
Yes, it does. And there's actually a museum. I don't think it's in Menlo Park per se. It's in Edison, New Jersey, where
Yes.
you can go and tour Thomas Edison's inventions and learn about him as an inventor.
Oh,
wow.
fascinating. I would love that. So patents are a big part of the startup journey. As you mentioned, that's what got you started with Menlo Park Patents. You've filed patents yourself and paid for the privilege. And so obviously that part of the journey is important for a number of reasons. But when should startups really start thinking about their patents in their journey? And what point is really the tipping point into it's now time to start filing or to reach out to someone who can file for them?
It's a really great question and something that I hear every day, at least 3 to 5 times a day, right? And it's really when you think of something, you want to take action to protect it, right? And by nature of how US patent law is structured, you want to be able to file a patent application sooner rather than later. Okay. Well, there's specific reasons for that. The US back in March 2013 switched from a first to invent system to a first to file system. So
Oh,
the example I like to use is that there's 340 million people in the US, assume that they are just as smart as you are and experience the same problems that you experience. Okay. The way you beat them at the patent office is by filing before all of those competitors. Okay. Um, what many startups fail to do is they wait. Okay. And then that waiting process comes with complications that ends up being expensive for them in the later portions of their startup.
Now, how does that the first to file shift? How does that actually impact? I mean, I'm thinking of we also deal with a lot of international founders who come into the US. How does that impact international companies if they don't file first in the US, but maybe file first in another country?
So the filing date, from what you would, that is local to you. Let's say you file in France,
Mm.
or Maria, we'll take it much closer to you in South Africa, right? You have 12 months from that first filing date to convert to a US non-provisional or continuation, right? So anywhere, once you solidify that filing date, and this holds for most countries across the world, you have 12 months to convert and enter into the national phase in other countries. Some of times those dates can change, right? The US is a lot more lenient in that, let's say you wanted to file first in the US and then go out and patent in internationally in the UK or EU, right? Well, from that initial filing date, you have a total of 30 months to go out and pursue international rights in separate countries.
Interesting.
We
That's
might
a
want to
lot
edit
of
that.
dates.
Yep, it is.
That's a lot of dates to keep in your head. So when you're when you're a startup, do you think it's best, and you've done this for yourself and now you have Menlo Park Patents, do you think it's best to do it yourself or do you think it's best to outsource?
It really depends on your experience. However, there are benefits to using a experienced firm that understands the patent law and the patent office and how it works, right? So what we've seen is that many inventors will try to do it themselves, only to end up spending more money correcting mistakes that they made during the filing process, right? And so that's really the benefit. Now, we understand why founders as a whole try to do it themselves, and it's really because you've got a set budget to protect yourself, build your product, get enough traction to raise capital and continue growing your business, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that really hit me as I was a tech entrepreneur, and I still am, that I built into Menlo Park Patents, right? Because in today's day and age with inflation, the rising cost of goods, housing market, I mean, it's all bombarding us right now. That budget is shrinking for everybody, right? And
Yeah.
so what we're doing is we're just saying you need to protect yourself. You need some sort of quality document that you can file at the USPTO, right, and get the process started, and then buy you some time in order to build your startup, get traction, understand really what it is you're doing inside of that company. So
Yeah.
that way you can raise capital successfully and then continue the process with that raised capital.
Yeah. So what are some of the implications if companies don't file, say, an international company, if they don't file in time in the US? Are they still protected in the US with their patent or not?
So in the US and Canada, we have a specific rule called the 12-month grace period. And basically, what it says, and I'm summarizing here, is that from the first offer for sale, use, or publication, you have 12 months from that date of that offer for sale, use or publication to file a patent application. Okay. If you go beyond that, yes, you can still file a patent. However, you expose yourself to having your patents invalidated,
Wow.
okay, by your competitors. Okay. In Europe, that is not the case. There is no 12-month grace period. Okay. So even for US companies, we tell them don't publish, don't talk with anybody, file first, and then go out and start building and talking. Okay. So in
Fascinating.
Europe, many countries they won't allow you to pursue patent protection in those countries, right? And the same holds true for certain Asian countries as well. So it's very important, it's what I say, it's not a marketing campaign for me. This is a serious business that we are really trying to push forward, getting the best protection for our clients and avoid them from feeling the pains when they actually grow and have great revenue and have something that they can be proud of a lawsuit. I mean, it's just like a prick. Everything's going well, and then all of a sudden you get an ice pick right in your ribs,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And it really happens at that beginning stages and carries over until you start making some traction that a competitor sees you and says, wait a minute, let's take a look at their patent portfolio. Is there anything we can do to invalidate them? Right? So it's really important for those international companies. Don't talk. File first in your respective countries or in the US. Okay. Remember, you have 12 months from that first filing date to convert to the US non provisional patent application, or what we call the full patent. Okay. Um, and in the US, you have 12 months from that first use, publication, offer for sale to file a patent.
Oh.
That's amazing. So you work with a lot of startups, obviously. What do you think from their perspective, is the biggest misconception that they have about patents? And I would also love to hear if you shared those misconceptions when you started, when you filed your first patent.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. You know, as a founder myself, the biggest mistake I've made is believing that something is not patentable, right? Now, the drawback to that is that at the time, I did not have the experience to say that it was not patentable. Okay. Only two people can tell you if your invention is patentable: the USPTO examiner and the courts. So even if you believe that what you have is currently out there and shouldn't be included in your patent, strike that from your mind immediately. Include it inside your patent applications. Okay.
I'm so
This,
okay, so but there's things that can't be patented, right?
yes, there are things that can't be patented. However, let's say you have a combination of different technologies that you use to come up with an invention, and it wouldn't be obvious or commonly known to use that combination of already patented items, right? Commonly known items to produce an invention that could be possibly patented, right? Um, and that's really the thing is taking that presumption that I don't have anything patentable, right, is the biggest drawback for a startup these days, right? Meanwhile, you could have protected yourself, right? I mean, a patent really is not just to protect yourself, but it's an asset to your company.
Yeah.
It's an asset that increases valuation. It's an asset that allows you to barter and license and draw additional revenue streams toward your company, right? Utilize that asset and figure out how you can utilize it.
And and I suppose that's even more the reason to have this conversation as early as possible with the experts like yourself to understand whether that, what a patent would look like. Because I'm just thinking of a lot of AI companies which are building on top of infrastructure from either OpenAI or Gemini or Google or all the other type of large AI cloud providers, who tend to think that, oh, I'm just adding another tool and I can't patent it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's really important because we live in an age, we're living in the AI revolution right now, right? About 60% of the applications coming through my door and that I see on our desk are in AI for all sorts of things. I mean, it's taking over. And hopefully we don't get to the point where we turn into the Terminator movie, right? But but that being said, it's a popular field, and it does not hurt to look at, if your stuff can be patented, right? Many founders believe that they need to have their AI fully developed and really understand the nuts and bolts of the invention in order to apply for it in a patent application. But that's also not true. You don't need a prototype in order to apply for a patent. The exercise of taking your idea from your mind and putting it on paper qualifies you to apply for a patent application. Okay.
Fascinating. I had no idea. See, this is why these conversations are so important. We deal with a lot of startups, and I've looked at a lot of patents and looked at IP for different startups that I've been advising, but I never thought about it in relationship to like what we do or what some of the ideas that we have are. And now you're making me think that maybe I should.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I think as you grow your startup, you're looking at processes, you're looking at how you run that startup. And IP needs to be a focus on the operation side. Okay. I mean, as you grow, you're doing R&D. You're getting feedback from customers. You're learning, right? Part of that is going to be a necessity to document that learning and translate that into an invention which would protect your company. Okay. Best ideas come from that learning,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? That learning is gonna make or break your company and how well you do it, right? That your entire operation needs to understand how to learn, be adaptive, flexible, and translate that into intellectual property that would turn into an asset for your company to allow it to grow and increase valuation.
Now that in itself can be, I think, an overwhelming task. I just wearing a hat of a product manager, I've done for decades, with numerous companies. There was always the philosophy that it's the engineering guys that always do the patents. But what you're saying now is it's more a intellectual property side, which is business wide, and everyone should get involved, not just the technology guys. And if that's the case, what advice do you have for companies on how to capture this and manage this?
Yeah, it's first of all, I got to give you two thumbs up for that because that's exactly what we preach to all of our clients. It's not just your CTO, right? So The CTO is the guy that's going to say, this is how I can describe this technology and help our patent agent at Menlo Park Patents understand what we're going for. Okay. However, the tweaks to the product and the customer interface is going to come from the product dev manager, right? And then the understanding of how that product is installed or how it's presented is going to come from your marketing team,
Mm.
right? So they have to give a realistic view of, what do the customers think about the product right now? Where is it failing? Where is it succeeding? And how can we improve? And it's
So, but patents aren't free. So as much as I love this idea of everyone being involved in all of those pieces and really thinking outside the box for what's patentable and going after that first to file placement for both protection of your company, protection of your processes, and assets to the company, patents aren't free. And so, how do you do all of that and still keep it from eating through your runway?
that's really why Menlo Park Patents exists, right? And what I've heard from founders is that a single patent would cost them anywhere from 30 to $50,000. Okay. In the grand scheme of things, if you're raising 500,000, which is a very round number, that's a pretty big part of your budget because you're going to need more than one patent. Okay. The way we do things to encourage inventors to reduce that cost is with certain tweaks. For instance, we tell them don't draft hundreds of claims in one single patent application. We've seen this done. It costs a lot of money to draft claims and then pay for the additional claim sets at the USPTO, right? So staying within the recommended guidelines of the USPTO saves you on the USPTO fees, but also saves you on the patent side, right? Now, we're a fixed fee firm, and all of our pricing can be found right on our website at menloparkpatents.com. And really, we did that to allow our clients to understand what's going to be the next charge, the next bill. What do they need to anticipate? And that allows for better management of their finances as they grow. We have companies with very extensive patent portfolios, right? And we've seen that as these portfolio grows, the company grows, the finance grows, the cost to maintain it grows. And we enact ways of ensuring that that cost stays at a minimum, but also guarantees the protection that they're looking for.
Fascinating. And so with that flat fee, if do you I'm so intrigued. How do you keep it that affordable? I mean, with it, I'm guessing there's constraints or guidelines or packages.
We have packages, but really what we've done is created a productionized system. That system is really to help the entrepreneur define what their invention is so we can understand it. Okay. The biggest problem I have is that I can't read anybody's mind. If I
Us
could, I wouldn't
either.
be
It's a
on this
huge
podcast.
problem.
Right. I wouldn't be on this podcast. I'd be sitting next to Elon Musk on a beach in the Bahamas somewhere. Right. But that's part of the process that can normally cost you more time and valuable budget. Right. So our system, it forces them to say, this is what you need to deliver to us. This is what you need to think about as you describe what your innovation does, how it works, what does it do? What's the nuts and bolts behind it,
Yeah.
right? It all starts there, but then as we receive that information, we take it and we put it through our own system, which spews out a draft that would broaden that and expand upon it, right? In a very precise manner. So that way, when we hand it back to the client, they're saying, wait a minute, where's my invention? But we're saying to them, it's hidden behind all this broadening that we just did. Okay. And that's really how we streamline the process. It's always A, B, C.
Yeah.
And on the front end, we look like a very traditional firm, you know, email and phone calls and Zooms, right? But on the back end, much of what we do is automated, and it's really due to our heavy investment into automation. That's how we control our prices, and our business model has really proven to grow and help those startups.
Yeah. And I just like to highlight that for a second because we talk so much on this podcast about processes and systemization and automation. So, as you can see, this is a huge part of keeping costs down and efficiency in a company providing services. So, that is why we talk so much about that. It really does help.
Yeah, and I mean it's a key thing that helps enable scale. So I'm sure there's a whole another conversation just around the automation that you have done, which does beg the question for me. I mean, we live now in this overwhelmingly fast-paced AI technology development stage in our careers. I don't think I've seen a technology adoption this fast and expanding this fast. But obviously, bear in mind, AI has taken about 50 years to get to this point, right? So what's the impact that AI is now playing a role even in how you help start drafting the AI patents and how can it help the companies that you work with to capture that intelligence for patents? What are some of the things you've done or seen on some of the trends that can help with that?
Yeah, so first of all, we are actively developing our own AI, and it's really to streamline our processes even more, okay? And be able to serve our clients in a manner that allows them the broadest protection possible, but at the most affordable price. And in terms of the patent industry, AI has certainly infiltrated it. We're seeing AI patent searches which allow for immediate presentation of previously filed patents and allowing companies to really look at the broad spectrum of what has been filed, what's being done in their industry, and give them a good idea of what's there. It allows patent agents, patent attorneys to draft in a much more efficient manner. Okay, so the most important part of a patent is the claims, but it takes us a very long time, and this is something that really drives up costs in the industry. It takes time to draft every other part of the patent application. It's a 50 to 100-page document, you know. And so AI is really stepping in and allowing us to streamline those parts, but also produce a level of quality that gets rid of that tedious nature of patents, which is, numeration of all the figures, uh, uh, making sure that all the description and all the features of the invention are incorporated. These are just some examples, right? But it's really making things more efficient. So that way, in the case of Menlo Park patents, we can file faster, produce a draft at literally a quarter of the cost of what you would pay a traditional firm, and also satisfy that requirement to file sooner.
Fascinating. And so, just a little bit into bad actorsville, if you will, or not, as the case may be. But with all this AI and this research that's available that you just mentioned that can find what patents have been filed, there's also now this new ability and this very quick ability to figure out if people have done their necessary on their patents and paid their fees and have kept their patents and what patents might be open for, say, snagging, if you will, or whatever the official term is for taking over a patent that hasn't been paid up. So how do you advise your clients about that side of things and how important it is to stay on top of their dates, on top of their portfolio, on top of their payments?
Patents are all about dates and fees.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the USPTO is a government organization, and Uncle Sam likes his taxes. Okay. So you have to always be on time. So, for instance, let's say you file something called a provisional. You've got 12 months to convert that into a non-provisional or a PCT application if you want international protection. If you miss that date, good luck. You're starting the process over again,
Oh boy.
right? But as companies, you were saying,
I'm just saying, oh boy.
oh yeah, so yeah, many have missed that date, many have missed that date, and it's really tragic. But as you grow as an organization, um, if you miss a payment, doesn't mean you lost the patent, not necessarily. You can
Okay.
certainly revive the application so long as you're within the time limits of the USPTO, if there are any, and if you pay the fee,
Yeah.
right? We do have clients that, sometimes they forget, they get busy,
Yeah.
right? And it just costs them more in the end because you have to pay the USPTO fee associated with fixing the issue.
Yeah. I
So,
just a random thought. Sorry, Maria.
uh,
Have you ever at Menlo Park Patents, have you ever thought about doing an automated like ACH transfer for payment of fees for your clients or things like that? So you make sure that their fees go in on time and they don't have to worry about it?
So we do provide a docketing service, and we do help those clients that have extensive patent portfolios to maintain it and look at the portfolio as a whole to anticipate not only just the fee part of it, but what's next in terms of grabbing the next set of claims that would benefit their protection. Right.
yeah.
So we're always working on those two fronts.
That's awesome.
I was going to ask the same because this is a lot of things to keep track on apart from all the other things in your business. So it's great to know that there is this sort of docketing system and alert system that can help them execute on doing their payments and their filings on time because it sounds like it can be extremely expensive if you don't do that and have to start over again.
Yeah.
Um, so stepping it back a bit just on the patents itself, what's the difference between a good patent and a bad one?
I've been asked this question quite a bit, and a good patent is one in which it not only protects your core technology of what you're marketing, but it also protects other ways of doing it. Okay. Now, a singular patent is great, but a multitude is better, right? So I would rephrase the questions to say, what's the difference between a good patent portfolio versus a bad one,
Oh,
right? Because you can have one patent, but it's always best to have one pending. You could get one granted, get one pending as well. And that allows you to navigate market changes, changes in your company, product changes, and capture more claims as you grow. A bad portfolio would not allow you to do that.
Yep.
Bad portfolio would also be very narrow in its approach, meaning that, as a startup, yes, your marketing is here. Your niche market is right here. You're not going beyond, and outside because it costs you more, right? So I need to get good here and understand how to operate here, right? And make sales and increase my margins,
Yep.
right? The same goes for your patent portfolio. If it's only, or I should say the opposite goes for your patent portfolio. If it's only here, it allows companies to come outside of that narrow line and create competition. All right. So our way of combating that is saying, let's just get one claim allowed. Let's get that goal. Small steps, small baby steps in the patent process, which match how the startups grow. It's a slow process. It
Yeah.
takes time, right? And really, if the patent is just a patent, that's a bad patent. It could be written really well, yes, but it's limiting to your company if it's allowed and doesn't allow you improvement in that portfolio. That's what I would define as a bad patent.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I love that idea that like for internal use, your marketing, yes, you need to pick your ICP and really go after a certain niche and things. And in the the patent side, it's the exact opposite. You go for every coverage you can possibly get, so to cut down your competitors. And honestly, both sides work to cut down competition. Like you're fulfilling a niche here and you're covering your bases back in the patent side. So it's kind of this reverse kind of funnel, which is an interesting concept and I haven't heard a lot of people talk about before. And so I think that's really helpful for startups to start thinking that way. Because they're so focused on marketing and customers and growth in that sector that they're pretty good at aligning there. And so now to refocus them on there's a huge difference when you're dealing with patents and IP. That's great for our audience, I think, to hear.
Yeah. Now, on the, I just want to get back into the companies as they now grow and scale, because initially I assume it's the CEO and CTO that work quite closely together in the early stages of the startup around patents, and as I say, the CTO might be leading the effort in that way. But as the company now grows and scales and bring on board more team members and more executives from other groups like marketing and sales and everyone, how does the governance around patents shift in the conversation, or should it be shifting? Is it and is it something that needs to be flagged? Who takes overall responsibility to say, hey, we now need to do a monthly or quarterly review on that?
Yeah, so what normally happens is we find that a company in their growth stages will hire a general counsel, and that general counsel will look at different legal aspects of the business. And sometimes that's the person that we are mainly speaking to, along with the CTO and their tech leads,
Mhm.
right? In many cases, the CEO will come on those meetings to explain the vision and overall direction of where the company is going. And then that trickles down to that general counsel and the CTO to translate that into, how do we achieve, market protection in the patent portfolio. Okay. For instance, we had a company that they've developed a medical device for pain management, and their original target market is what they raised capital for. But as they grew, they found out different uses of their technology, and now we are helping them patent those different uses. Okay, and that came from their CEO who said, here's other market opportunities that we can expand into.
And it comes straight back to that it's the whole company and everyone has a part to play in this portfolio of patents, because that information probably wasn't going to come from the CTO.
You, it's really, you have to be able to, as an operation, individually encourage a group of people to work towards a singular goal, right? And that goal is to build a business that will not only just generate revenue, but value in the marketplace and service those customers well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And like you said, it takes everyone in the company to recognize that and then lead that into how do we protect ourselves?
Yeah. And if you missed it for the audience members, culture. It's all about a culture of really prioritizing IP and patentability and communication at the end of the day. If your teams aren't talking, then you don't know these things. And so those systems and processes about communicating, about cross non-siloing, as I like to say, then are very important to this piece. One of the things you mentioned, Shem, a couple of times now is valuation, which I love because IP is very much an asset. I come from an accounting background, so assets are your friends. Everybody loves an asset, and an asset that can honestly grow your profits at the end of the day through licensing or other measures. And so when you're talking about this valuation and patents in particular, what do patents do to attract investors and increase a company's valuation specifically? Like, how big is that gap versus like a great patent portfolio and a terrible patent portfolio? What does that mean for investment and company valuation?
I think we should speak about it from the investor side first. So, an investor is looking at a company and saying to themselves, how much of a risk is this to place my hard-earned money or the investor's hard-earned money, if you're a VC, into this company that will then take it and try to grow into a successful business, right? A patent communicates to that investor that there is something proprietary about my startup company. And that proprietary technology is going to we are making it hard through our patents for other competitors to copy our proprietary technology and enter into the market. So we limit our competitors' ability to acquire market share and thereby increase our ability to become a unicorn one day,
Yeah.
which is obviously very difficult. However, look at it from that lens, right? Additionally, if the startup fails, which unfortunately happens in the industry very often, the investors can leverage that patent portfolio and try to get a return on investment. Okay. Now, from the valuation and acquisition part, one thing that we always tell clients is, what do you think a company that acquires you is acquiring?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're acquiring the assets. And what are the assets? How can you prove that you own this technology if you don't have title to it? Patent is that title. And as you grow that portfolio to become useful to another company, right? That's really what they look for. Okay. They can certainly reproduce manufacturing lines. They can certainly reproduce, employees. but patent portfolio is much harder to reproduce.
Yeah. That's that's a great way to look at it is it's the unreproducible asset that you have on your balance sheet. It's the thing that people are going to look for. And I love that idea of the fact that your patent portfolio is really your investors' CYA. Like it's their insurance policy against a loss at the end of the day. And so there's a lot more stability there for investors to put their money at risk. And in the atmosphere we're currently in, where we're seeing instability in kind of the external factors around companies, that IP and that stability of having a coverage at the end of the day for investment is really important.
And I like the way that you also plays it from an investor side that they're really looking at how to protect the risk of the investment. So what are the barriers for either competition to come in? And I mean, I'm also an operating partner with a investment fund in embedded finance fintech companies outside the US in developing markets. And I cannot tell you how many times I see this idea, and then a question is, okay, in due diligence, tell me about your patents. And they hardly ever think about putting on the decks that they have either pending patents. So we do early stage, so pre-seed through Series A. But yeah, it's amazing to see how little attention gets paid on the value of this. Everyone is so focused on chasing whatever they think the multiples are.
Yeah.
And they're not thinking about the patterns. And it seems like the showing that you already have a profile plan. So as you have a go-to-market plan to showcase a patent plan would be something that would attract us as investors a lot better. So what have you seen in engagement with investors on how they view that and what's the best way for startups to position this?
But
No worries.
Maria, why don't you could you go through that question again and then
Yes.
we'll answer
So
it? We could.
I was just going to say so in your engagement with founders and investors, because I'm sure you have lots of conversations with investors as well. What's the best way founders can position their patent portfolio within their pitch decks and conversations to help increase the value of their company with the investor conversations that can show that this is how an investor can investment can be protected even though the company may not succeed.
Yeah, so first and foremost, the correct step is letting the investors know, hey, we are pursuing patent protection. That's the best step you can take first. And then the second one is showing them that we are not only just pursuing a singular patent, we are going after multiple claim sets, and we have a vision that we're going to enact that will follow that that portfolio as a whole, right? But it gives the investors the sense that, hey, these guys are going to produce assets for us and for their company that de-risk it and be able to grow their company, right? In the deck itself, this is just my own personal recommendation. But what I've done previously is just literally list the titles of the applications, right? You don't have to give the numbers because sometimes it's not published and you do want to be careful, but just, list the titles, okay? Do a summary. This is what our patent covers. Our AI machine learning or our proprietary medical device and our method of surgical incision, right? And that summary, should be enough. But sometimes if you want to take it a step forward and really make things interesting, put a future synapses in it as well, right? We're here right now with our patent portfolio. We anticipate that we're going to be able to patent also this part of our technology and this and create patent families from that. so that way we can, look like a solid company,
Yeah,
you know.
and I like that future synapses as well because I always advise companies when you do your go-to market, don't tell me your marketing tactics you're going to do. Tell me your market acquisition roadmap that is in alignment with your financial forecast for that pitch. And now it's also add your future patent filings that you're thinking of in that as well. That will really strengthen the case.
And it's again the asset part of this. You're building assets that would increase valuation and entice a potential suitor to acquire you,
That's also
right? And that's really the name of the game of what we're in terms of the startup industry right now. It's everyone is driving towards that acquisition, but there are certain foundational steps that we spoke about earlier that need to happen in order for that acquisition to make sense and even for you to make it towards that goal, right? And that's why the patents are not only just crucial but so imperative to a startup's growth.
yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. I think that looking really towards that future and planning, it's the same thing you do for budgeting. It's the same.
Yeah, I'll just sort of reiterate what Katie started saying is around it's so important to also the same way you look at your budgets, same way you look at your forecasting, the same way you look at your product roadmaps, having a operations plan as well, which includes adding filing in your overall budget. Don't forget to do that as you grow and scale is quite key. And I know we at the end of our podcast now. So Shem, what are the key takeouts that you would like to have founders take away from this conversation? And then also, how do they get hold of you? We will also post the contact information in the show notes in the YouTube channel and in our podcast channels.
I think the most important thing that I can communicate that will benefit founders is to file now, file fast. You don't need to have all the nuts and bolts figured out. There's procedures that we can capture those additional nuts and bolts in a future filing, but file now, file fast. And then additionally, don't presume that you don't have anything patentable. Come talk to us. We're an open book. We're happy to help you understand the process and help you understand how to go about protecting yourself, right? Best way to reach out to me is through our website, menloparkpatents.com. And also connect with me on LinkedIn, which you guys are very welcome to share. It's a public profile anyway. And just reach out. If you listen to this podcast, okay, and you reach out to me on LinkedIn and you use the promo code ScaleSpark, I will give you a 10% discount on services. But you got to just say, hey, I heard you from ScaleSpark, right? And I'll give you that 10% discount.
I love that. Thank you, Shem. So, audience, you know what to do. You know you have ideas. You know you need to patent them now, rather than later. So definitely reach out. We'll have this all posted in the show notes. Use our name, ScaleSpark, when you talk to Shem. Uh, And we are so excited to have you here with us, Shem, today. And thank you so much for all of your information and for being on Ops or Die with us and sharing all that IP information. It was fantastic. And now you've got me thinking about what can we patent ourselves?
We might.
Come talk to us. Pleasure to be here. And thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Ops or Die, the podcast for all things business operations, with your hosts, Maria Pienaar and Katie Whitcraft. Our theme music, composed by Min Tran, and editing services provided by Troubleshoot Productions. For more information on how to make your operations smart ops, visit www.scalespark.ai.